Get off my
private property. Get off, hippity hoppity, get off my private property. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Political Pigpen. I am your host, as always, the Politicrat. And tonight we have a rather early in the week episode for you because this is going to be a different week in terms of the lineup. I know I haven't quite gotten the schedule yet in terms of when I'm going to actually be putting on the or premiering episodes of the Political Pigpen. It's been pretty arbitrary, but this week I'm doing a much earlier episode, hence why I'm doing it on Monday. And then tomorrow we're going to be doing the debates, providing commentary, riffing on Biden and Trump being idiots. And then on Saturday, we are going to have our first episode of the philosophy/history/philosophy of history live stream, the Homo Sapien Agenda. So the very first episode is going to be on Saturday. Anyway, tonight we have some relevant topics to cover. All of them somewhat interrelated, maybe with an exception of the last one. But those three topics are, number one, Supreme Court. We all know that that's kind of a hot button issue right now, especially with Amy Coney Barrett, whatever, being nominated officially by President Donald Trump within the past week. So that is going to be, well, she stirred a lot of controversy, particularly in left-wing circles. Not even really left-wing circles. Would you guys say that's more actually just the hashtag resistance crowd?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, yeah. I mean, because either way, like actual left-wing circles weren't going to like who they got anyway.
Right,
so
because
they're pretty much
who she was replacing is one of those big, like, oh man, we got to fight that. We got to get somebody who is also RBG in there again. It's like, nah, that's not gonna happen.
I mean, RBG wasn't even all that. RBG wasn't even all that left wing compared to,
like you say, like
a lot of them today.
You draw a distinction between
criticizing her for her stance on indigenous issues, where she kept ramming through pipelines and things, and she was like, "Oh, Colin Kaepernick, so stupid, peaceful protest," but oh, Brett Kavanaugh, he's so great. I have so much respect for him.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah.
And then she was very critical of Black Lives Matter, from what I remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she was not really like,
she was a centrist. She was
exactly,
she was
and so
centrist.
the resistance crowd is traumatized by her death.
Well, I mean,
they're making her into a saint.
Oh, they did that to fucking John McCain, so they'll do it to anybody.
Yeah, the angels are crying. John McCain would be crying in heaven if he saw you right now, Mitt Romney.
Like
good old Mittens.
I mean, they fucking hated John McCain. They hated John McCain until he was fucking with Trump, and then he died, and then he was like fucking untouchable.
Oh yeah,
so
they ran like racist smear campaigns against him back in 2008. Damnation, you're probably old. Yeah, you're definitely old.
No, absolutely. I absolutely remember. Like this is the thing that people fail to understand, right? The reason why Donald Trump was put up as president as a presidential candidate in 2016 was because the left called George W. Bush Hitler, then they called Mitt Romney Hitler, and it's just like this insane rhetoric that goes forward when they it's like, okay, no, we're just gonna put someone who doesn't give a fuck what you're saying and gives you guys the middle finger across the board, and he's incendiary rhetoric. So,
yeah, I do think you have your finger right on the money there. Although I think it does say something negative that people are willing to nominate someone just based on how much they will disregard criticism and will annoy their political opponents. And by the way, like, if there was some sort of left-wing equivalent to that, in some ways that was Hillary Clinton.
I agree.
She had kind of a Teflon sort of attitude, like no political scandal seemed to touch her, no matter how corrupt she got. And she seemed to be like very disliked by a lot of conservatives in America. For her associations with the rather corrupt Bill Clinton administration, and also her rather unpleasant personality and outlook on life. Mm-hmm. So I really do think that they were playing somewhat of the same game. And we just ended up getting the one that the left hated as opposed to the one that the right hated.
Yeah, exactly.
Either way, a Clinton or Trump victory would have made American politics more divisive, more toxic, more partisan.
I mean, I don't know. I think most lefties would still hate Hillary.
But remember, Hillary Clinton is not necessarily catering towards the lefties. She's catering.
Of course.
No,
She's a corporate Democrat.
in the greater scheme of things, Hillary Clinton would probably be considered like right of center. Just
I don't consider either
stage.
party left. I don't consider the Democrats left wing. I think it's pretty naive to consider them that.
No, they are. I'd say the farthest left they are just barely to the left of center, with an exception of Sanders. With an exception of like Sanders
it depends upon like this is a thing. There's an identity crisis in the Democratic Party, right? They don't know, like there's the old dogs that are sitting there. They're saying we can't go socialist, right? Because we cannot do that. It will destroy us. So we can't do that. Then they have the ideological split, which is you have people like Ilhan Omar, AOC and all of, and like the squad crew, right? That are trying to they're trying to shift it more left. And that's going to come to a head. They're going to fight each other, and you're starting to see some of that actually kind of play out in the whole Joe Biden situation.
Indeed. Yeah. And you did see something of a similar effect with the Republicans, with the Tea Party, although I think that movement kind of fell apart.
Yeah, when Trump, they just became Trump cards eventually.
And QAnon people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
No, the thing is, the original Tea Party, they actually, until around 2010, were actually a legitimate grassroots movement who were opposed to the bailout. There were a lot of centrists there, people who were socially liberal. There were a lot of Ron Paul supporters. There were a lot of normal conservatives, and a big part of it were people who were just against all the bullshit wars in the Middle East.
Yeah,
and then
there's that, and there's a few of them that were
crazy
against and also against the evangelical Christians.
Yeah, no, a lot of them. No, they were basically the original Tea Party. And when I say us, this is reference to me, Chicago, and Liberty Zero, but they were us.
Yeah.
But then they basically got hijacked by the neocons, and you got people like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, and just all those folks who just came in and made it what it was, and then it faded away and became like a Trump. They just all started supporting Trump, man. Yeah.
It's pretty.
But basically, can we, like, I think the big difference, though, between the Tea Party, or at least the original Tea Party, and the modern, hashtag resistance people, are that the resistance people, they're not really grassroots. They're either funded by a bunch of corporate money. And I'm not like a George Soros conspiracy theorist or anything, but he's one of them.
I was wondering if you're going to bring that up. Because Newt Gingrich got shut down off of Fox News when he brought that up. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, but then
that's hilarious.
Yeah, no, but then it's also a bunch of middle-aged suburban moms, the resistance. Mm-hmm. Chicago. Remember that one Twitter account? So I basically have been at war with this. It's more of a one-sided war on my part. There's this one middle-aged woman who lives in my area apparently, who acts like a bot, but I don't think it is a bot. I think it's just like a scared mom, and she has a lot of followers, and so she always talks about how like Trump and the Koch brothers are like best friends and they're trying to destroy democracy, and about how libertarians are actually like fascist. And
wait, what? The libertarians are fascists?
That's what she thinks. She legitimately thinks that.
I have never heard that.
And
it is actually something of a common
Hitler,
talking point. The libertarian right to fascist pipeline is something I've heard of.
No,
before.
I think there is something to that. I do think that there is a pipeline. However, it is not most of them do that. It's only a loud minority.
I don't think.
If I can speak,
go ahead.
If I can speak to that real quick. Yeah, I was just going to say the libertarian, the fascist pipeline is what we call that, right? But what that is,
I don't think they were actually libertarians to begin with.
It's libertarians that never had principles.
Yes.
I was gonna say I can't in my right mind think of any libertarian that I've ever met that is like completely against authoritarian governments, ever agreeing with the idea that the state should have more power, that somehow that withers away to a free society. I'm just like, it's so fucking crazy in my head.
Keep in mind that a lot of lefties online are operating with a really weird definition of fascism that is applicable to basically everybody on the right.
Okay, so what's funny is, I remember this was maybe 2 years ago. I was high on ADHD medicine, and this was 2 a.m, and I was like, I spend so much time making my tweets sound perfect, like so it like takes an hour per tweet, but so that's ADD medication for you. But anyway, so I was arguing with like a legit, I don't know if it was a tank, it was some kind of communist, but one of those cringe communist accounts on Twitter. We all know those. At least Lapis is
the good old
classy.
cringe fringe.
Lapis is classy though, so like she does not fall into that category.
Well,
But,
thank you very much.
Yeah. No, but anyway. But yeah, no. And then they were saying, oh yeah, no. The libertarians and fascists both believe in privatization and capitalism and free market. And then I'm like, no, okay, the biggest thing is libertarians are for free trade. Fascism is ardently protectionist and for free trade. And then get this is the stupidest thing I think I've ever heard somebody say on Twitter with regards to economics. They said, no, libertarians and capitalists, they're protectionists too. Have you ever read Adam Smith before? Adam Smith, who was the original economic fascist, talked about how it is one of the government's first responsibilities to protect people's private property. That's protectionism.
Oh yeah, that
Boy.
someone really didn't take an economics class in high school.
Yeah.
That is silly.
That
I
is
don't-
a
God.
brain dead fucking take, man.
And they were calling me retarded. And
Like,
I
you
was
wanna
like, you're
talk-
so stupid that
Well,
you're calling
it's so often the case that people who default to like, oh, you're stupid, you're dumb, you don't know what you're talking about, are themselves rather everything they're saying. If you can't have an argument without completely degenerating to a frothing fury with the other side, then you're obviously not in a fit state to have a conversation.
Sure.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
definitely agree with that. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah,
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
but
I have actually seen like, self-proclaimed anarcho-capitalists who are Trump supporters, but I don't think they necessarily represent the majority of anarcho-capitalism.
Well, I mean, a lot of self-proclaimed like anarcho-communists or whatever, like people like that are into Vosh are also really trying to gun for Biden, but that's not really because they're ideologically in line with Biden, and they'd never say they were.
no, I mean, by the way, can we talk about?
I'm more talking about the stick, sex, and hammer types.
Oh yeah, I get
No,
you.
well, okay. I mean, I kind of like Sticks, but I mean, he's kind of cringe on some issues like the Trump. Like, I mean, he makes good rhetorical arguments. However, that he's not taking the actual libertarian stance here. He's more playing into the lesser of two evils type thing, which I'm sure, which I know, Liberty, you're like 100% against the lesser of two evils voting.
Correct.
Whatever. Yeah.
I am
Anyway.
also against the lesser of two evils idea, but like it's a pragmatic what's the other option, right? When you
Yeah.
start
I mean, I
looking
know.
at it,
I get the argument 100%. Right.
I wholeheartedly agree with the idea that you should be principled and make your choices. And like, if you legitimately believe that a third party is the superior candidate, you should vote for them. But understand that you are basically chucking your vote away into the garbage.
I mean, did your vote really matter in the first place? Depending on what state you live in, it's probably more beneficial to vote for a third party and boost their national numbers than to vote for one of the big parties and have your vote.
Oh yeah,
literally
no,
go away.
precisely.
Absolutely.
Like
Okay,
in California, if I vote for the Republican Party, I am literally throwing my vote away. But if I vote for the Libertarian Party or the Green Party or whatever, that'll like boost their national numbers a little bit.
Or no, but then the thing is, like, that's why in California, for instance, like, okay, do you know what actually one of Nancy Pelosi, one of her, do you know what like a main part of her base is in her constituency, or in her a major part of her constituency is in her district?
First, tell me where her district is, then I'll guess.
Her district is San Francisco.
Oh yeah, okay.
Do you know what a major part of her support base is? They
A
don't
bunch of
necessarily-
homeless people.
No, conservatives. Do you know why?
Because they don't. Because they're voting. Because they're.
Because she's the most. She's the most viably. She's the closest to the right out of any candidate who is viable.
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
She is the closest you can be to right wing and still be viable in that area. So that's why there are a lot of conservative, like most conservatives who live in that area will end up voting for Pelosi, and it's pretty much like that in California, New York.
Well, you know,
they will
governor,
vote for the
well,
moderate
the governor
Democrat.
recently he vetoed a bill that would give us ranked choice voting in state elections.
Yeah, no, that's because they want power.
I know. Ranked choice. I think about Maryland has ranked choice now, right?
I don't know.
Or
No,
Maine.
but the thing
Maryland
is,
or
they're
Maine?
like, oh, we live in a two-party system. You need to play by the rules. It's like, no. The reason we live in a two-party system isn't because it was set up that way. It's because it naturally became that due to corruption. And now the media is trying to manufacture consent and trying to trick us into thinking that we are in a systemically organized two-party system where you have to choose either red or blue, because the thing is, it's the same team. It's just like red. It's basically Halo red versus blue. Same fucking shit, but different
They're
colors.
wearing the same armor. They're flying the same ships, but the only thing is different is the actual color of the armor. I agree wholeheartedly. That's a good analogy.
Yeah, no, I think red versus blue, like Halo. that is the best analogy for.
And they're both in Blood Gulch.
If you agree with that, then why do you buy into the Trump meme?
What do you mean?
Me?
Me or Damnation?
No, Damnation. I mean, Trump's like pretty fucking corporate at this point. He's not like some fucking anti-establishment guy. He is the establishment.
What the hell do you like? What the hell do you mean not anti-establishment, right?
He's the closest thing you could no. So he's not necessarily anti-establishment, but he's the closest thing there is to anti-establishment.
Right.
Which is nothing.
I don't care about corporate shitheads, right? We'll get to them after we get to the political shitheads, right? I am more concerned with Trump being a political outsider, right? He's never held public office a day in his fucking life before he won the presidency. That's all I give a fuck about, right? That demonstrates that he is not a political insider, nor has he have any influence. Like, let me phrase that: he's not a political insider in regards to he's never had public office before.
Yeah, but he's a fucking billionaire.
Sure.
Donating money to different. Oh, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Go for it.
Well, I mean, donating money to political candidates and using and through lobbyists and things like that, to me, in some ways, that still makes you a political insider. You're just influencing the system from the outside. I don't think George Soros has ever held elected office, but I still consider him to be a political insider.
See, me personally, I've run the definition of political insider is somebody who actually owned public office. Yeah.
Okay, but you have fucking Trump. He consistently flip-flops what party he believes in based on what's not popular, who's not in office. He always wants to be a contrarian, but I don't think he has any fucking principles. And if you're just voting someone because they're an outsider and then you don't really care what they're doing once they're in office, and I'm not a super anti-Trump person, but you're wearing the hat, to me it looks like you've kind of bought into the Trump shit. I just find his cult of personality so fucking grating, man.
Don't ever accuse me of being part of the cult of personality, number one.
Okay.
Number two, right? I'm basically a single issue voter when it comes down to the idea that social justice and all of its repercussions and any must be stopped at almost all costs, right? The idea that racial identitarianism and cultural Marxism is ever being floated across the entire board at any point in time, that is such a horrific idea to promulgate across the entirety of any political spectrum whatsoever. It's so toxic that it creates divisiveness and doesn't allow people to actually be able to compromise and make choice and make decisions, right? So I don't give a fuck about any other policy primarily, except that social justice has to be stopped. The current iteration of it has to be stopped, and it has to be put down. It has to. The Democrats have to continue to lose over and over and over again until they get to the point that dealing with BLM and any sort of racial identitarianism or anything like that, that is not a winning strategy. That's it. And Trump represents that as well.
I mean, I guess he'd represent yeah, I guess, but I don't know. At that point, you're still. I wouldn't get into the Trump shit. You're just voting for him because he's not the other guy.
I'm voting for him because I want social justice to continue to lose. I want to drain their power as much as humanly possible.
They don't have. But did they have any institutional power beforehand?
Do you understand what how they actually operate?
I mean, yes, in the schools and shit. Sure, maybe I can give you.
Not
that,
even talk about the schools. Okay.
I don't think in the government at a federal level, any of that shit was legitimate. It's mostly just pandering, I think.
Well, have you ever heard of the theory of the cathedral, though?
Oh,
Because
yeah,
the
okay.
cathedral rarely
Yeah, this is
actually
interesting.
involves the government.
This is what gets interesting. It's the intelligentsia. It is the donor
It's,
class. It's the culture.
It is,
Culture.
yeah, and whoever owns culture is basically who controls how society is shaped.
Politics is downstream from culture.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, what would you say represents culture? Can be a rather nebulous term. Would we count it as who owns newspapers, who owns massive media conglomerates?
I consider the cathedral to be religion, public schools, universities, and the media.
Religion is an interesting one because that is something that is very, like, heavily, at least in America, very politically in the hands of the right, and very heavily on the side of state power.
Yes.
And the
Yes, it
media
is.
has been hyper decentralized. Like, yeah, mainstream shit that like only fucking boomers watch. Like, I
Like Fox
don't
News.
know people who
Well-
watch TV
Well,
anymore.
also, you are talking to someone who considers progressivism to be religion of its own. So
Yeah, it's a secular form of Protestantism, more or less.
I've heard this
Yeah.
talking point thrown around a lot, but I don't really inherently know what sort of concept in social justice has any sort of connection to predestination, let's say.
I mean, it's not so much that; it's more so So I don't necessarily think. I think the predestination.
it's more
is
so
Marxism.
basically being.
I think Marxism is more so the predestination.
basically being politically correct is, and also being politically correct in progressivism is the same as being enlightened in Buddhism.
Okay, but which is it?
Like, it
Buddhism
is
and
something to strive
Protestantism are
for.
very, very distinct.
They are
religions.
completely different.
I'm just calling it a
Weltgeists.
religion.
Also, do you know anything about Buddhism? Because I don't think that's a very good comparison.
It really isn't,
You
honestly.
strive towards enlightenment in Buddhism, right?
Yeah, but you know what enlightenment means? Like, the concept of enlightenment in Buddhism is like, it's like fucking detaching yourself from all things. It's not like striving.
I'm saying that, like in Buddhism, in progressivism, you strive to be as politically correct as possible in this life. That is the only time where I would compare to Buddhism.
That's
Oh,
a
so
weird.
you-
That's a
you-
weird analogy.
It's a
Let
really
me
weird
see if
analogy.
I'm getting this right. So you think that political correctness is a form of self-denial in a similar way that Buddhists practice a form of self-denial to reach closer to enlightenment, like taking vows of monasticism, fasting, etc.
I'm just comparing it to a religion that
Wouldn't
doesn't have God.
shouldn't you
I know,
compare?
but I'm
No,
trying
no.
to
It's-
Apples,
it's
Progressivism does not
analogous,
have
though.
God.
apples
Like,
to
it's-
apple. Wait. Apples to apples here. Wouldn't it be like, say, a Christian refusing to use certain words, like saying shit or fuck
Yes.
or oh god,
Yes.
compared to someone
Yes.
policing their own language in a similar, more progressive way? Like that's a better argument to use.
That's
I'd
a
say.
far better argument.
Yeah, which I guess falls
Whatever
more in
you
line
say.
with religion as Protestantism than, progressivism as a
I mean,
Protestant.
it definitely has a very
As a
Christian
religion.
aspect. It has a very Christian aura to it, especially in terms of the underlying principles, the concepts of like there's like confession, absolution, and then just the whole. For instance, it's a concept
martyrdom?
of social justice. Yeah, martyrdom, and then you also have just, for instance, like I don't want to use the term social justice to refer to Christ, but he did kind of have that vibe about him, and that was what, like, helping the poor, helping the needy.
Well, I don't disagree
Render-
with that. With doing
Yeah,
that
no,
stuff.
I think I think it's because Christianity is so embedded into Western culture
Right.
that it's inevitable that it is going to express itself in a very Christian way.
Sure.
I think you hit the nail right on the head there. It's more due to Christian hegemony than it is to any sort of inherent connection between left-wing projects and religion.
Well, no, I think, but in a way, it is inherent. Inherent because it's so embedded into the zeitgeist of our culture, and has been
Exactly,
for
because of
thousands
Christian
of years.
hegemony. Well, no, yeah, thousands.
Maybe hegemony isn't the best way to say it. Maybe just like maybe tradition is the best way to say it, because it's kind of hard to break from that tradition at this point, especially because we've been thousands of years, so we've become so accustomed to it. So I
you
mean,
might say it has an almost hegemonic influence on our culture and thought?
yes, but in an almost deterministic way, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
But I do, okay, so, but also recently, so I don't know if Anthony's still here, but Anthony Avis du Buisson says, oh, yeah, no, Anthony, we were on the same podcast, or not podcast, but live stream together last Thursday. Cultural Marxism is a dog whistle for far-right nonsense. So I personally both agree and disagree. I think that the concept itself exists in a very distinct way. However, cultural Marxism, just as a term, is very often parroted by the far right and has become more or less, because the term itself is, I think, too close to Hitler's term of cultural Bolshevism.
Sure.
And I don't think that's very good for
the reason why I use that is
it isn't a coincidence.
The reason why I use that term is specifically it's the one that describes the idea the closest. Like I could describe in detail what I'm specifically talking about, right? Which is the idea that, like, if we dive back down to the core ideas of what Marx was talking about, right? Marx was talking about the eternal, like, in a capitalist society, there would always be the eternal struggle between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, right? And what the reason why the bourgeoisie were always trying to capitalism would always generate an oppressive state that would push the bourgeoisie and extract their labor and wealth from them through debt, graft, and fraud, and all of that, right? And basically, by using the power of the state or the power of the people themselves, they ripped that back from the bourgeoisie to give it back to the proletariat to break the chains open and make themselves free within a stateless, classless, moneyless society, right? The thing is, in cultural Marxism, you take away the terms bourgeoisie and proletariat, and you remove it with white and black, or
it's more or less a bastard, like the bastard child of Frankfurt School ideology.
Right? Exactly. Yes. And like the term cultural Marxism is what is used to explain that.
I think that the thing with cultural Marxism is that conservatives see an enemy, which is intersectional feminism, to them, and they're Marxists back in the 60s. How can I appeal to that Cold War paranoia? I know I'm going to mash these concepts together. And sure, you're going to see some sort of influence because, leftist theorists share ideas around. And it's not necessarily like surprising that intersectional feminism emerged pretty much after, the old left had lost in terms of the Soviet Union.
Okay, guys, I just realized, and I'm going to apologize to Cotton for this because I did not realize that I still had screen share on. I thought that was a big mistake. Apparently I had been live streaming. No, apparently I'd been live streaming the chat in Facebook or Twitter. That's my bad, Cotton. I'm sorry.
This is a good conversation we're having right now, but if you want to get back onto topic, it's been 30 minutes and we haven't actually touched on any of the topics we were supposed to talk about.
What I was going to do, the reason I didn't pull this up is because we were talking about just like fake libertarians, and I just wanted to pull up Liberty Hangout, for example. Like, does anybody even take Liberty Hangout seriously?
No.
Liberty Hangout is cringe.
It is. It really is. But yeah, anyway, so let's move on to the Supreme Court. So what do you guys think of Barrett? Let's just call her Amy Barrett, because honestly, I looked at her. This is what I'm going to say. This is the comment I'm going to start off by saying. Better a conservative Catholic than a fundamentalist Christian. Go.
I haven't really got a super hardcore chance to dig into her too much. Like, I saw the announcement, and I was like, well, it's a Trump pick. I can go ahead and I'll put that to the side for a minute because I've been dealing with a bunch of real world shit.
Yeah.
But I I appreciate the fact that he picked a woman this time, because then it cut, like, just from a pure like strategy point, they can't.
Oh, it's
do the
great
same.
for optics.
It's a great optics choice and strategy, because it cuts off
God, yeah.
the rape accusations right off the bat.
Kavanaugh, which was complete bullshit anyway. Like, I mean, I'm not a huge Kavanaugh fan. I mean, he's definitely a lot better than I thought he would be.
Yeah.
Because he's actually sticking to precedent, which is what I want to see in a Supreme Court nominee. I don't like judicial ethics.
If she's not lying and she is like what is it, the term literalist or whatever, like Scalia was, I don't see why people are.
The term is originalist.
Originalist, that's it.
No, even the literalist has to do with the Bible.
That you got me on the religion train of thought. If she is an originalist like Scalia, like she says she is, then I don't really like see what the problem is necessarily. Like,
the thing is, even liberals respected Scalia.
What I like about this, right, is it washes out Justice Roberts, that fucking cucks. So the enlightened centrist meme, right, specifically describes Chief Justice Roberts, right? He's the one that's like, oh, look at the Ku Klux Klan, right? And then there's these other people saying we don't want to die, and he's like, oh, we need to figure out some method between this. It's like, no, you idiot. Sometimes there's a right choice and a wrong choice. You got to make you got to make a choice.
Exactly.
And Justice Roberts trying to find that in that big brain enlightened centrist bullshit. Fuck that guy. The minute he started going down like the fucking terrible takes of like, oh, I've got to worry about my image and my history and my legacy, I was like, that guy is not. Fuck that guy. Get somebody else in there that will help him, that will override that vote. That way we can basically it'll be a 5-4 conservative slam down, and he can fuck off.
I don't know. I also think there's definitely value in a more balanced court. I mean, it's an odd number, but
I agree with you that a balanced court where there's fights and things like that are desirable, but it's one of those things when you start examining like issues and things like that. A swing vote, I would be fine with a swing vote who is actually voted moderate, right?
Yeah.
Like across the board. Like if Justice Roberts was absolutely a swing vote all the time that he had since the point that he has been elected, not elected,
he wasn't elected.
Right. I misspoke.
Was
from the point that he was appointed
by Bush 1?
By Bush
1.
Bush
2.
Bush 2. Was it Bush 2? I thought it was
Bush 2, actually.
It's one of the Bushes, I remember. But I know that. But he was decidedly a conservative justice, right? And only recently, when the court started to swing towards the conservative side,
he's an anti-Trumper.
Right, yeah. And it's just like,
he's more of an activist than
right. He's not voting the way precedent should be, or the way that the law actually reads. He's injecting what he believes it to be, his own interpretations of it, from an activist perspective, and legislating from the bench.
So Liberty Zero, we haven't heard from you in a while. What do you have to say about this?
Well, as an anarchist, I think 95% of politics is acting.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, and so when I think of the Supreme Court, I think of it more as these religious figureheads, right? Like if you think of the Catholic Church,
they're the high priests.
Yes, they're the high priests.
They're the high priests of the law.
Yeah, and so I don't really concern myself so and what happens there. I do think that, like especially when you saw what happened with the Kavanaugh thing, I do think it does have effects just because people allow it to, affect them and and really cause division. But other than that, I think it's right now it's just it's mainly a tool for division.
Yeah, I could vibe with that pretty hard. I get that.
I can see that argument. I can vibe with it. Yeah, same. But either way, so can we talk about the obsession with Barrett? Like, honestly, I don't think it's as bad as Kavanaugh. I haven't even really seen it. Like, for instance, I was watching a Tim Pool video earlier, and He was talking about how like everybody is obsessing over Barrett. Like, mind you, I have not been active on Twitter, thank God, lately, the past couple of days. But how hard are they actually going at it? Because I have not seen it, especially when comparing it to the whole Kavanaugh fiasco.
Well,
Like-
I think the
And
whole
I know
thing is-
Lapis, yeah, you're active on lefty Twitter, so
It's not nearly as bad.
yeah, I mean, people don't like that there's going to be another conservative Supreme Court
I mean,
seat.
for the Hoppians, in Hoppians Twitter, we kind of just see her as a slightly better Justice Roberts, and that's
Yeah, but
it.
no one cares about you guys.
Okay, anyway, as I was saying.
Oh, shut the
Um,
fuck up.
It's true.
Oh boy, we're gonna start this now. Go ahead, Lapis.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't mean to speak out of turn or anything, but yeah. No, people are not necessarily happy that there's going to be another conservative Supreme Court seat. And people are especially not happy that Mitch McConnell broke the precedent that he set that Supreme Court seats should be decided after the election, during an election year when it's even closer to election time. It comes off as, rank hypocrisy.
Oh yeah.
So this is, I agree with you. I actually originally thought that I agree. I totally wholeheartedly agreed that it was hypocrisy, right? There's some key differences that need to be brought up about this, right? So, what was actually the situation at the time that the Merrick Garland election appointment happened? Was that the Senate was Democratic, and there was it was a conservative justice that died, right? So the precedent has always been that if the president and the Senate were different parties, then it was supposed to wait until after the election. I agree, it's a shitty fucking precedent.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah,
I've never heard it either.
Go ahead and look up Actual Justice Warrior, and I think there's I think it was a Razor Fist that actually brought this up. That's a standard precedent.
So you're saying is if the leader of the Senate and the leader and the president are two different people, then only
Two
then
different parties.
two different parties. Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're going to be two different people unless we've entered a dictatorship. But anyway, so yeah, there are two different.
Well, no, the president of the Senate will always be the same party as the president.
Sure, because that's the vice president. But
Yeah.
in this particular situation,
Mhm.
actually, that person doesn't vote unless there's a tie.
Right.
Let's say the Senate majority leader then.
Yeah.
If they are two different people, then and only then should we have an election first. But
Right.
if it's
That's-
I mean, that's not in the Constitution.
Right, but that's a precedent that's been done before. That's the way it's been done when this situation arises. And it's not like a it's not a law that they have to abide by, but it's one of those things that this is just like a lot of this shit is done in precedent.
What is the case that they're drawing this precedent from?
It's not a specific case. It's just the way they've said it's
Well,
always done.
yeah, but you should have an example if it's been done that way before.
Give me a second here. Let me pull this up.
sure, I mean it's kind of ridiculous to expect people to have examples like on hand. But if you can't find any upon searching, then I think we can conclude that this makes McConnell look worse than it did before.
Sure.
oh yeah.
But honestly, I really think that the whole Supreme Court setup is just designed to be partisan. It's wood to the fire. It really does just have this sort of result where people are going to turn the justice system of America into this sort of partisan back and forth, and you have to be hoping that certain justices will die so you can get the legislation you want through and maintained by the court. What I really think should be done is that there should be 3 liberal justices or left-wing justices, 3 right-wing justices or conservative justices, and 3 centrist justices. And every single president, if upon the death of conservative, liberal, or centrist or right-wing judge, should replace them with a judge of a similar ideological type. That way, the court system or the Supreme Court does not become an ideological punching ground. Instead, it maintains a certain amount of
That
consistency.
would be interesting. You would definitely run into the problem of, because judges are appointed for a lifetime, where someone will be appointed as a liberal, and then slowly but surely their views will be considered conservative at some point.
So kind of like Roberts, but
Sure, yeah, Roberts would be a good example. And so then, like, is that still conservative? But like, is that still a conservative seat? Is that still a liberal seat? How would you determine that? And eventually you would kind of drift to having just more conservatives due to the fact that these are going to be old people.
We also
Yeah,
need to
and
remember.
a second countermeasure to that is every 10 years you must replace a Supreme Court member.
Okay, I'd be fine with that.
Okay,
just in
actually,
general.
so I forget how many of you were on this episode, but it was the episode, we did a last minute one. It wasn't the Political Pigpen, but it was a last minute stream we did, Judges All the Way Down.
Yeah.
It was sort of in memory of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and then we also kind of talked about the Supreme Court and discussed actually ideas of how we think the court should be restructured, and we discussed that judges, well, it's more or less a conflict of interest having the president appoint the judges because it makes them, in effect, an extension of the executive office, or has the potential to do that. Because, I mean, let's face it, every single time that a justice, because technically justices, they are confirmed by the Senate, however, that's more theater. So,
No,
the
it's
idea-
purely theater, yeah.
the idea that I proposed was
I mean, not
that
purely, I guess, but it is very theatrical.
the idea that I proposed was make it more kind of course, there should be checks over it, but make it more independent. Make it almost like how they, I think the analogy I used was make it like how they choose a pope. Make it, but instead of a college of cardinals, make it all the federal justices. The federal justices choose among them. They deliberate, they get in a room, and they decide which among them should be the next justice. So it's more like it's judges choosing judges rather than, for instance, like to make sure that, like, and Ted Cruz, for instance, would not be eligible. Because let's face it, politicians, Supreme Court judges should not be politicians. That is a complete conflict of interest because then there is more of a threat that they could veer into judicial activism. And honestly, judicial activism, I feel like, completely goes against the entire precedent of the Supreme Court, what it was established on in the first place, the entire intent. But so if you have it like all the justices get together in a room, they deliberate, 2/3 of them have to select who the next justice is going to be, and then they're completely sequestered for the entire thing, and then like they let out of the chimney like red, white, and blue smoke or something. Then they choose then that's the next justice. And I think it was pretty unanimous on that stream. We all agreed that that might be the best way to do it, the most fair way, the least corrupt way, and it ensures that the court is not going to be an extension of a particular branch in the federal system that we have.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty favorable to that idea, and I still am. It's an idea I've had for a long time, actually.
Okay.
Not necessarily federal justices because I'm Canadian, but I have had, and we actually have a similar model with the Supreme Court.
So you guys are basically like North Montana.
Mhm. Well, it's just that we have so many more, like even our conservatives are just, their hearts are not in it as much as the American conservatives. They lean more to what you might expect of a centrist Democrat.
Yeah. I think it's like that with most conservative parties in the West.
Mm-hmm. Like the Republican Party is just more right-wing.
Yeah.
Than you would be able to find in Canada unless you went to unelectable parties like, let's see, what are they called again? The People's Party of Canada?
Oh, Bernier. Yeah. I actually kind of like Bernier. He's kind of funny.
Well, I mean, I have my thoughts on him, but honestly, I feel like
he's still to the left of most of our Republicans in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
He's more of like a Boris Johnson type, except more critical of immigration.
Well, the problem with Bernier is that he got a bit too obsessed with immigrants for what was electable in Canada.
Yeah, because you guys are a big fan of. I mean, I like immigration personally. I lean more towards the quote. I don't like the term open borders, but I lean towards free immigration, so long as you limit their or block their access to welfare until they become like citizens. But I'm generally more in the free immigration camp, and I know that's where I think Liberty and I probably agree on that issue. I know Chicago is very much against that because of his recent Hoppyanization.
Wait, I thought he was more like libertarian.
Well, he is. He's a Hoppian though, which is like
Hoppian
conservative, conservative and capital libertarianism.
Yeah.
You just admitted to being
I'm
a
more on the
conservative
conservative
voter.
end.
No, I mean,
I'm not
I
a
do
conservative
think
voter, thank
has,
you.
I do think Papa has some interesting ideas, though. Like, I really,
Yeah.
really do like his idea of covenant communities.
But anyway,
Oh,
do you
yeah.
think we should discuss the pros and cons of my idea versus Politicrat's idea? I think one pro of Politicrat's idea would be that it's no longer appointed by the executive, so
Yes.
that weakens the power of the executive over the judiciary and helps make a more clearly defined tripartite system.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's the whole point. It makes it more independent. But then again, some people, I feel like you'd find. Okay, so this is just a thought, a question for you guys, because I still haven't been able to figure this out on my own or decide the scenario would be. But who do you think would be more likely to oppose what I suggested in terms of the American party politics? Do you think Democrats or the Republicans would be more likely to oppose let's call it the Holy See model of justices?
I think both parties are invested in keeping the system. No, because of policy drift and the Democrats pose as progressive, the Democrats would probably be more open to having that system. You know,
I think it would depend on who's in power, honestly.
Yeah. Right now, I think the Republicans wouldn't want to mess up the sweet deal of having 6 conservative
true.
Supreme Court justices to liberals. Whereas the liberals be like, okay, anything to free us from like 50 years of having conservative rulings, strike down all of our legislation.
So this is so Lapis, you're basically our left wing foil on this episode, and I invited you for that. I mean, I like you honestly. I do think that you and Damnation are actually, and I love all of you guys, of course, but I do think out of all of the guests I've had on, you and Damnation are probably my favorites in terms of like insight and all that.
Well, that's very kind of you to say.
Thank you. I
Wounds
appreciate
me.
that.
But no, I love Chicago. But yeah, no, Chicago. I like all of you guys. In terms of,
Yeah, I know. I'm just messing with you, man.
Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, but oh shit, what was I going to say? No, anyway, I was going towards so yeah, like I was saying, Lapis. So you're sort of you are the left winger on this episode.
Yeah, I'm your token far leftist.
Yeah, the token far leftist on it. So I think what I see the left doing potentially, if they were hypothetically to oppose this model, it would be because they would say it's elitist and not democratic enough. Because I feel like at the end of the day, there'd be a lot of people on the left who would want to directly vote, like a direct election of justices, have the people decide.
Yes.
And that's the thing. And it's like, and it's, I believe in democratic institutions. I do believe that it is a solid way of keeping our leaders accountable, just that model. However, the thing is, there is democracy is not an inherent good in and of itself, in my opinion. And historically speaking, too much democracy ends up ultimately destroying democracy. And I think that's been a major theme on this show ever since its inception, about almost a few months ago at this point. But yeah, no. So I think that is the sort of the fatal conceit of the left, because they are more pro-democracy than they are pro-liberty. And I believe that democracy can be a component of liberty. However, they are not. I don't think so. I disagree with, like, for instance, Peter Thiel when he says that he thinks that liberty and democracy are incompatible. I think that is completely untrue, because I think that an ideal society that upholds the values of liberty would have some democratic elements within it.
I mean, I don't think you can have a liberty if you don't allow your people a voice on who is their leaders.
I do
I'm
agree.
even assuming that we move to a completely hierarchical less system. Where
democracy should not be the bedrock of our system.
Then I think you do get into, okay, well, this liberty would result in eventually just the forming of little mini warlord states. And that is not actually any better excessive.
But then my main problem with democracy is I feel like democracy, if left unchecked, enables centralization in the end, because we all know what is the ultimate form of democracy. And again, that's another major theme of this show. Caesarism. That is democracy unchained, more or less, or if you prefer French, Bonaparte.
Kind of makes me want to like Photoshop Caesar's face onto Django Unchained.
Yeah, democracy unchained. Oh, that would be a great thumbnail. Mop. I'm putting you on that. So yeah, we're gonna need that for a future stream or episode or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no. So
if I could push back real quick,
sure, go ahead.
Lapis, you said that you have to have democracy in order to give people a choice, and allow for liberty, right?
Yeah.
Now, in like libertarian theory, what you would have in some schools of thought, I guess, is like small, like the Politicrat mentioned earlier, covenant communities. And
hey, that's my school of thought.
there you go. But
I've been a little hot-pilled lately.
But yeah, what you would have is different communities where you are free to, well, you're not free to move in necessarily, but there are theoretically many communities that you're free to move into, and like, you know, find your niche and find the people that share your values there. And that's all based on private property, and you don't, you know, like if democracy equals choice, right? It's you go find where you want to live, who you want to live with.
Yeah. But what about the people living in these communities? Do they have any say over what sort of values are practiced in the community? Or is it just kind of on the assumption that no, all of these people will just live together, they'll do their own thing, and they won't let any outsiders come in?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and
depends on the community, really.
Yeah, so if you look at like market incentives and all that, you know, a lot of your values like will be a lot of people who are trying to market stuff to you, their goods and services, are either going to adopt your values or at least cater to your values in order to gain your business. And like, if it's just not working out with those people, then like I said, it would be a case of you'd probably move on and find people that do practice your values.
But moving and upending your entire life and finding work in a new community does require a certain amount of capital. And if you're a poor person in an under-regulated economy, you could see something like the robber baron effect emerging, where people are laboring for this boss that pays them in coupons, and they spend the coupons at the boss store, and then they ultimately have no savings to actually leave, even if they dislike the place where they have been made to live.
And we don't even have to like present that as a hypothetical. That's literally things that happened. There was a lot of mining towns out in West Virginia,
like sharecropping,
that were set up
railroad towns,
in West Virginia.
And a lot of railroad and mining towns are like monopolies that are enforced by government, right?
That is also,
but they're not all monopolies that are forced by government. It's partially government monopoly, but also these private forces relied on, you know, militias like the Pinkertons to enforce their will upon the worker. Centralization of power does not require a state. A state is a tool that can be used to enforce it.
Right. And yes, like Pinkertons and like mining companies, right? They are technically private companies, but you know, if you look at it, like they're out there violating people's rights, and you know, theoretically in a libertarian society, that's something that people would like. That's your libertarian values, and so like theoretically, that's something you wouldn't see because that's the value of that society.
But not
Right, but
everyone in society will subscribe to the same values.
Exactly. And how do you prevent it from happening?
And in fact, any
Yeah.
sort of attempt to prevent people from having libertarian values would probably be worse than letting people develop their values on their own. Like, look, I'm very far left. It would be nice if more people were far left, but I do not want to prevent people from becoming center, center left, right wing, what have you. They can make up their own minds.
Well, that's the same with me. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
your society only functions as if everyone believes in libertarian values and a libertarian conception of rights.
Right. Exactly.
No.
So, yes, it is. So like, let's say, for example, there's a situation, right, where, I don't know, someone is, I don't want to use the meme, but this is the only person that comes right off the top of my head, that someone who is as influential and well-spoken as Adolf Hitler himself. And
guys, I just want to say real quick, Hitler was a bit of a dick.
oh yeah, he was an asshole, and he was able to gain power. Right?
Really?
Because he was able
Hitler was
to.
an asshole.
He was a big, gigantic dickhead.
He was
But-
problematic as fuck.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think
And-
we should cancel Hitler.
I agree. But
I'm
So-
tweeting that. I'm tweeting hashtag cancel Hitler.
so without, and I agree with you that Hitler used the state to take control, right?
Hmm.
In that particular situation, there's no mechanism to stop that same concentration of power. Either
I mean,
way.
I mean, well, look, what, like fucking post World War I Germany is kind of an example that one could never happen without other government forces, because the consequences that led to Hitler's rise were hyperinflation and a post-war economy.
Absolutely.
And in a way, just too
Right,
many.
right. But we're discussing.
not enough checks on the democratic system. Because,
No,
again,
I agree with you. But we're just sure. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
You're not wrong, but we're discussing a hypothetical because the Liberty Zero presented a hypothetical situation of a libertarian society, right? So let's play around inside that, right?
Well, I mean, his
There's-
society is fairly utopian, so I don't think he would
Sure.
have within his society. I think he could say you just wouldn't have that discontent.
Okay.
But that's the problem
But
with
that's not
having
real.
a utopian society and presenting that as a solution.
Well, yeah. Well, okay.
You can here's
I
let me help you out, because this is how I actually present this, right? So how I argue this, right? Because I argue a very similar idea from principles, and then reality comes crashing in and people fucking smack me down, right? How I actually argue it is, I'm like, that's a goal that we should strive for, because even if we fail in that, we'll get closer to the ideal, and the closer that we get to the ideal, the better off for everybody.
No, that's my problem I have with communists. Is because
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
well, that's my problem. That's my problem with most utopians, including communists, is because in moving towards their goal, they don't always necessarily make the world a better place.
Sure.
That's true.
Right, but at the end of the day, libertarian ends up as if the goal has become more free, right? Yeah, of course, there's going to be a situation where it flips around to where, like, an anarchist society, and then we go into that where there's no mechanisms at all, and there's no hierarchies to be able to control those who want to be detrimental to the society. But when we're talking about maximizing freedom to everybody involved, the goal of creating the maximum amount of freedom that we can, but still have a functioning society, is inherently a good thing.
Yeah, I think most people here do believe in individual liberty. They may conceptualize it differently, but I think most people can agree that that's a good thing worth striving for.
Yeah.
But to turn it back towards the original object of the discussion, the Supreme Court, Politicrat mentioned that he thinks that the main objection from the political left might be, the justices will be too elitist because, it's not reflective of the will of the majority. It's reflective of a small judicial educated class. In some ways, it's a bit of a technocratic idea. Well,
Not even necessarily technocratic.
Another objection that they would probably have. Now, this is not necessarily an objection I share, but I'm making a hypothetical argument here. It's definitely something I think a lot of people in my timeline would say, were you to propose the idea. And that's, and everyone can feel free to cringe at this argument. Please remember, it's not me saying this argument. It's an argument that I think people might make. And it's this. The, federal justices are overwhelmingly richer, whiter, more male, more straight, etc., all of the privileged groups than most people in society. Therefore, the laws that will be enacted by these, or the people they will pick, are going to be people who reflect the values of that group, that little judicial caste, as opposed to the broader society. And that will kind of reinforce white supremacy, patriarchy, what have you.
So I want to come on to another, just the next topic regarding the Supreme Court, of course. But so you see the Democrats right now. And honestly, it strikes me at this point as kind of more of a last ditch, we're desperate and sore losers type thing. But packing the courts.
What about it? He didn't kill her on purpose. I mean, he
Ruth
gets the
Bader
pick.
Ginsburg did not kill herself.
No, but people want to pack the courts. They want to say, okay, if Joe Biden is president, they want to increase it to 12. Like that seems just,
it was a bad idea when FDR brought it up as a bad idea now.
You mean add more justices?
Yes.
Yeah, packing the court. Yeah,
That seems. Why would we need more?
exactly.
Like, is
Well,
there?
the idea is, okay,
Yeah, I
well,
would like to be presented.
even it out. We have 6 conservative justices. Now we should have more liberal justices, so it's balanced.
Well, no, because
the courts, the Supreme Court's not supposed to be.
If you want the federal government to move even more slowly, I guess you'd want that. But fuck, I mean, adding an even number of justices will make there's so many they will just never come to agreement on so many things.
So
we have another person coming in.
Okay.
We have Ray coming in right now. So
I feel like packing the court would just slow it down.
Oh, so you decided to give more rep to me. Thank you very much.
Well, we're trying to keep here on the Political Pigpen. We try to keep things as nuanced and as balanced, or not even necessarily balanced. We just want to have as many. This is a show here where we like to debate high-level, important ideas. In the words of a Mr. Rafe Dubin. Hello, Ray. How are you doing this evening?
Hey, not too
Why
bad.
do you invite me on?
What?
Oh, I didn't know you had some of an English accent.
Yeah, acquired through an inordinate period of time spent talking to English people and living in the UK.
All right, so Ray, we're currently talking about packing the courts here. I know you follow U.S. politics.
Yeah.
Pretty well. What is your opinion on packing the courts?
Okay, we're at the point where ordinarily I would say that packing the courts is basically a very it's one of those tactics that once you have begun to say that you want to do it, then the other side can also do it, and you end up with this spiral of continual packing, and you end up eroding the perception that the court is, quote, unbiased, although we know that it really isn't unbiased anyway. But you lose that perception. You lose the sort of the legitimacy that comes from that perception. However, I think over the last 4 years, democratic norms in the United States have been shattered to the point that maybe it doesn't even matter anymore. If you expand it to 12 and just pack the court on purpose, are Republicans really at this point in time in any position to really talk about the maintenance of norms? Are there any left?
Absolutely they are.
So this is what I think of it. I don't think that the idea of packing the courts comes from just that whole idea. It's not an ideological idea. It's more of a tactic. We want to win because we're sore losers. That's how I see it. Because the thing is, I am sure that if the Republicans were in the same if they were in the same situation, they would do the exact same thing. Just kind of like how with the Electoral College, whenever the Electoral College doesn't work out for the Democrats, they say abolish the Electoral College. Whenever the Electoral College doesn't work out for the Republicans literally say the same exact thing, abolish the Electoral College.
It will just work out for the Republicans more often just because of how voting, how certain states vote, I mean, the small states vote for the Republicans.
So are Democrats really bad for calling for something that we all knew they were going to have to call for at some point?
I mean, I think it's bad.
Maybe the timing is wrong, right? Maybe they should have waited until after November the 3rd to actually mention it, because now that they've already mentioned it and they've essentially lit that as a lamp that exists in the world that is giving off light, now they've already said that, it means that if there's a scenario in which Republicans win the election, they can now say, well, Democrats already talked about packing the courts. What if we just packed it?
And to be fair to Joe Biden, he expressly came out against packing the court. And he said, if we pack the court, they're going to add 3 justices,
yeah.
and so on it goes.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Okay,
there
no,
are
I'm not
More
saying-
of an
And where does
idea
it
on the
stop?
activist wing.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Joseph Biden has said that he wanted to pack the court, of course, because I mean, when I started, I was essentially giving his position at the beginning, and then I was saying that he's taking that very principled position of refusing to do so.
what about
But
his handlers?
I don't
AKA
see. I mean, the others who disagree with him, like I don't see that. I don't think that they're being immoral in what they're saying there, given that no one else would have played by the rules anyway.
What do you have to say about that, Chicago?
What do I have to say about that?
Packing the court. You haven't weighed in on it. Neither has Liberty Zero.
I think it's so stupid, honestly. Like, just wait for someone to die. Then you have to go and pick another one.
Fair enough. What about you, Liberty? I know you don't. I know generally on principle you're not a fan of the Supreme Court, but what just on the tactic of like let alone let's just forget about the ideological part of it, because I don't even think it's an ideological. Like, no matter how much mental gymnastics anybody who supports packing the courts wants to go about using to justify any ideological reason for packing the courts, I don't think it is an ideological reason at all. But from the perspective of it as a tactic, what is your take on it? Liberty?
Oh, he's muted, so.
Liberty, 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 liberty. You there?
Evidently not.
God.
No, I think maybe he's on Be Right Back or something. I don't know.
Possibly. But yeah, no, I just think it's sort of an egregious attempt. I honestly think it would be funny if they did, and it just ends up completely backfiring, and they just get more conservative judges.
Well, if they push it now, let's say they push it now, right?
No, but they're not going to push it till after Biden is elected, if he's elected.
Right,
Which
exactly.
I don't even know if it's going to happen at this point.
No, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. But like, let's say they push it now. Like, this is hypothetical. They push it now, and Trump wins the election. Okay, yeah, sure. We'll drown out the other two anyway. Fuck them. like it's one of those. There's certain tactics that should never be done, and packing the Supreme Court. As I said, it was a bad idea when FDR brought it up to ram through, and even I'm even somebody that agrees with some of the tenets of the New Deal at the time of what it was done for, right?
Yeah.
And it was a bad idea when FDR proposed it, right? Because yeah, I agree that there's a perception of what that there's supposed to be the objectivity of the court. Now, if you wanted to make an argument that it's been a while since we've updated and added in more justices that could potentially, like, we still want to maintain the odd number and like kind of make it more reflective based on the population, I could see that being a good principled argument to add more justices. But just to slam through more justices based upon your ideological bent on it, I think that's just absurd.
Yeah. I mean, I really do see Mitch McConnell as doing that. On one hand, disrupting someone from.
I honestly think McConnell's probably one of the worst. Like, congressman there is right now. He literally does embody the rot at the heart of the system.
Doesn't this kind of feed into what I was saying at the beginning, though? Which is that, like, if Mitch McConnell is going to be behaving like this for years, and, there was a point in time when I even used to make jokes about the things that Mitch McConnell was getting up to. I mean, guess it's no longer as funny as it was then, but, like, if he's going to behave that way, why should anyone else continue to be suckers in this game, only to just get punked by him continually? I mean, I'm being very frank about it here, but, I mean, Republicans are just punking the system, right?
Yeah.
Well, in my personal opinion, I think that one of the Republican justices, preferably Kavanaugh, should be replaced by Eric Garland, just to uphold the precedent that this whole thing of holding the Supreme Court hostage during elections shouldn't be rewarded.
Okay, but the thing is, we also need to consider, so we live in our time and place, and I think every generation thinks that they are simultaneously living in the single greatest and most terrible period in all of human history. That's what Damnation. What just happened?
I'm sharing my screen, right? So this, we actually came full circle back to my point.
Well, can I actually finish?
Yeah,
what I was saying? Yeah. Okay, so every generation thinks that they're living in the most important period in all of human history, and it's sort of generational hubris. And I think that that makes us very short-sighted, and it's like that each generation. That's not, again, this is a bit meta, but that is not inherent to our own generation either. But I think that it almost makes me wonder, has the same exact thing happened before? Like, has it always been like this? Has the system just really always been like this, but we just think that it is unique to our own time?
Possibly.
Yeah, but ideally we should try to move it in a direction where it isn't like this. I mean, it just seems so cynical, this whole, oh yeah, I know there's tons of time before the election, but let's not let this justice take hold, even though he's a pretty compromised candidate. Let's just hold it out and hope that we win. And then on the other hand, we've got 40 days to an election, but no, we're going to ram this person through because we want dominance of the court. It feels extremely cynical, and I think that
Totally, yeah.
diminishes faith in the Supreme Court as an institution, which by and large is not necessarily a bad thing, but if we're going to keep a Supreme Court, then I think what I suggested earlier, it's something that's probably not on the table for the Democrats, but I don't think that packing the court is a precedent that is a good idea to set. And you can say, well, Mitch McConnell, who cares about precedent because the Republicans do whatever they want anyway. That is not necessarily like he started it as not an ethical position in politics.
No, I mean, I agree. Ideally, none of this should have to be playing out the way that it's playing. It's just that when it comes down to it, I get the idea that you need to obviously demonstrate an appropriate level of ethics and be consistent. But when it comes down to having the choice between victory and power versus being noble, personally, I prefer to choose victory and power in most cases because of the fact that at least if you win, you get to shape what happens afterwards. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you just nobly lose, then they'll just regard you as a laughingstock and continue doing whatever it is that they were doing.
Sure.
I mean, over the past 4 years, it's been nothing but Republicans trying their desperate hardest to teach everyone that lesson.
Sure, but I don't necessarily think that, I'm not one of those, don't sink to their level, we could never sink to their level.
Civility, we need civility.
Yeah, those sorts of people don't really deserve any sort of respect. But this is just a terrible precedent to set. And you could say, McConnell has already kind of set this precedent with his dreadful handling of the Senate. And then Damnation would say, well, actually, the precedent is that in divided Senate and presidency control, we wait into an election to sort it out. I don't know. To me, there seems to be still something fishy about, oh, no, it's so close to an election. Let's wait until then. And then immediately switching. And so I think that because that is such a crummy thing to do, it shouldn't be rewarded. And if it is possible for the Democrats to do it, they should remove one of the conservative justices for that reason. However, I don't think it is possible. So I guess people are like, well,
you can impeach a justice, but you need it to be an impeachable offense.
Exactly. Right. And so that's how you get to expanding the number of people on the court then, because you can add people to it, you just can't remove them very easily.
Yep.
Could it be done in such a way that, okay, well, this was a really stupid and unfair power grab, so it needs to be resisted in some way. However, our current laws for Supreme Court justices don't let us just to remove someone. Like, is rape even an impeachable offense for a Supreme Court justice, or does it just have to be about, their legal thing?
It needs to be proved.
Well, no, there's more evidence. Like, there's more corroborating evidence that. So I don't even necessarily buy that Biden did what he did. I mean, I think it's definitely possible, but there's more evidence that he did that than Kavanaugh did what Christine Blasey.
Oh yeah, well, if you're arguing, do I think Biden is a sex predator? I definitely do. And I think that was one of my biggest, I don't really want to vote for Biden because of that.
Well, you're Canadian, though.
Yeah.
Exactly. But, I do have a lot of American followers, so I didn't want to be openly supportive of Biden because I'm like, okay, well, this is selling out my feminism, basically. But then I thought of Ray Masamura's point that, okay, well, there is no real other alternative here. If Biden wins, that means less rights for people like me in America, less worker protections, cuts to the welfare state. So Yeah, fine, bite the bullet. Ugh, Biden. But I felt no sort of enthusiasm doing it.
And I would also think that, I mean, in terms of the impeachable offense thing for Kavanaugh, I mean, I have a sneaky suspicion that the things that were alleged that he did could have occurred. It's just that since they don't have a literal conviction on him, then it would be very difficult, I think, for them to legally remove him from a position if he isn't actually convicted of the crime.
I mean,
It's
talking about
unfortunate.
bad precedents, Jesus Christ, that would be terrible.
Yeah, because then they just start accusing everyone of stuff.
If you
and
could
then-
remove someone out from office, like with what amounts to a rumor, like
Yeah.
like you would have to be like some type of fucking choir boy to get into public office at that point. You would have to have like be an unknown, like homeschooled your entire life. We would have a political
Yeah.
class of people who have never interacted with anyone, because interacting with anyone and being known as an individual would put you at risk of being impeached.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this meme that's on screen right now with the Nako Lull with the OK Boomer meme.
Yeah, wasn't she? Oh, by the way,
Basically
I learned that she has a criminal record, which I thought was kind of funny.
It's irrelevant to the
of course.
conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, and I think she was a social democrat anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
But I mean, the point that I would make on this is that that's not necessarily as big an own as Stone Toss thinks it is, because I mean, people who are on the radical right were perfectly happy to actually do that for approximately 20 years before finally landing the role on Donald Trump, and they rolled a 6 on both dice, and they managed to get Donald Trump into power. So I mean, one of the left's biggest impediments really so far in the United States has been that they've been unwilling to be gradualist. So quite often they'll come out, they'll endorse something extremely radical, and then if they don't get their own way immediately, they'll then back off and go into kind of like doomsayer mode, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this time around, it seems that something different is happening. Whereas people decided, okay, so we couldn't get our way this time, so we're going to vote for Joseph Biden and then try again next time. That is a far more mature way, ironically, of approaching this whole issue than if in this meme, OK Boomer Girl had just walked off and not voted at all, and then allowed the return of the same far right government that presently exists.
At the same time, though, it is I don't think like a lot of people. The problem is for a lot of leftists who want ideological change to happen. A Biden victory will placate the people who are under the false impression that Biden is left wing. I mean,
He's
I don't
not
think
left
anyone
wing.
is.
Like,
I don't think
I mean,
anyone is
aware
under
he's
that
not-
false impression,
no.
though.
I'd argue on some economic issues, he's actually to the right of Trump.
because like in no like objective sense is Biden on the left.
No, definitely not. In the wider sense, at least.
Which is why they supposedly picked Kamala Harris to appease the.
He's not on the left either. What are you talking
No,
about?
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. Her record before she got into the Senate was decidedly not any sort of left wing policy positions whatsoever. But what they harp on is when she was elected senator, her policy positions changed and her votes have tended to be more progressive now. And I'm like, so is she two-faced and speaking both out of both sides of her mouth at the same time, like a politician, or which one's the real Kamala Harris, right? And it's all bullshit. It's all fucking bullshit.
Well, I mean, in the context of the UK, I think we saw something like this similarly play out before, where people used to complain about the Labour Party consistently selecting as leadership people who are just basically just centrists.
Like are you referring to people like Kinnock?
Yeah, I mean, Neil Kinnock would be an example of that, but of course, I'm also referring to like everyone, like Tony Blair, Gordon
Blair.
Brown,
Yeah, no, Blair's base like
Ed Miliband.
he's basically like, wouldn't you agree though that okay, well actually Ray, you know this more than I would because you're in the UK. Oh, sorry.
Basically, I mean, people were upset about these things, but they moved the ball down the court. Like, they actually took the Fabian strategy and continually did genuinely use it. Like, if you compare where the United Kingdom was in the year 1996 to like where the United Kingdom ended up at the end of like let's say 2010, like on cultural issues, on economics, etc., the amount that the ball had been moved down the court was significant. Like, Fabian socialism was indeed occurring. It's just that by pretending you're not doing it, you get a lot more done.
Yeah, but we're in a different position in the United States where they are pretending they are progressive when they aren't.
So we have our next guest just finally he was finally able to join. If anybody, this is his second time on the Political Pigpen, but Outstreamer, how are you doing today?
Not going to be sticking around here very long, man. I got another chat I got to go do with some of the one of the guys from the IDW wants to talk to me.
Okay.
So I'm going to duck out of here in about 3 or 4 minutes. But I'm sorry, I'm coming into this pretty late. Just give me a quick topic that you wanted me to jump in on.
No, yeah. So why don't you give your position on? Well, I mean, you would have technically been good for all of these topics that we were going to cover tonight. But just start right now. Give a rundown on what you think of Barrett, because I mean, you notice pretty big freak out, and I've even noticed some. I don't know. I see a surge in anti-Catholicism now, which is.
Well, I mean, that's a good old American tradition. That's not new. As far as Barrett goes, they don't hate her because she's even necessarily a Catholic. There have been left-wing Catholics on the court before. They hate her because they think she's going to vote conservative. I personally don't even really see her as much of a right-winger. If you go into her legal jurisdiction or her legal history, even as far as she voted when she was with Scalia, the kinds of things she supported as far as, I forget the law firm that she was with. It's very questionable whether she's even really an originalist. As far as like, I understand the sort of like justification. We got to get somebody on the court, or they're going to fill the seat. I just think fundamentally right wingers need to get out of this mode wherein they think that that getting quote unquote right wing judges on the court actually supports us. The fundamental question right wingers need to be asking is not whether or not, the left is going to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg with another Kagan or another, I don't know, another Marshall or something like that. The fundamental question right wingers need to be asking themselves is why is it do all of our conservative justices on the court systematically over time vote further and further to the political left? There needs to be a point in this country where the right has a very serious conversation about how power actually is allocated in this country.
Okay.
But we can't even do that because we're just trapped in this 99% media cycle. So personally, I think the entire thing's naturally going to be overblown. It's going to be used for political purposes. I don't think that the Democrats are going to be able to stop that. If you want like the hard elements or hard contours of how I think it's going to play out, I don't think they're going to be able to stop the nomination.
No, totally not. No, I cannot see them being able to. Things are not going well for the Democrats right now.
I don't think there's going to be any confirmations. However, nobody's going to come anywhere near that seat until after the election. However, I suspect whoever wins the election will get the seat. Same thing with I forget the name of the justice that Gorsuch replaced.
Merrick Garland.
No. Garland was the one they were going to confirm, but then the Republicans.
McConnell. Yeah, McConnell essentially blocked. It was Carlin, right?
No,
it was
Garland.
Merrick Garland.
Yeah, it was Merrick Garland who was supposed to go to that seat. That was Obama's pick, but
that was his nomination. Yeah.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm glad it was Gorsuch because he's actually been pretty good.
You can't get around the fact, like we can argue whether or not it's Machiavellian politics, and yeah, sure, McConnell. I'd like the joke that was going around is McConnell should have just come out and said he was a hypocrite. Just come out and say, what?
They all are.
Yeah, they are, but it just would have been really funny to hear it from McConnell. You know what? I'm a hypocrite and I want to win.
Because I noticed, because you identify you're a traditionalist.
Yeah.
You would say so. I know you in real life, like personally, and you
Well, don't talk me here.
No, definitely no. But from what I've noticed with you, you're very similar to how people like Jimmy Dore tend to criticize the Democrats more than the Republicans. I've noticed you tend to criticize the Republicans as much, if not more, in some cases.
Well,
Democrats.
To a certain degree.
Well, yeah, in a sense.
Jimmy Dore's, most of like the Young Turks and Jimmy Dore and progressive criticisms is about how the Democrats are not going further and further to the left.
And then isn't your criticism that the Republicans aren't right?
Well, my criticism is that there is no fundamental right-wing opposition in the United States. Like, we haven't had a fundamentally right-wing party in this country for at least, I would say the last genuinely right-wing president we had was probably Nixon. He was the last of the paleo.
Okay.
No,
That's
No,
actually really, really
But-
interesting because
I was
Noam
thinking the opposite
Chomsky
thing.
described
I'd say
Nixon
Coolidge.
as
Honestly,
the
I'd
last
say
liberal president.
I'd say Coolidge or
Say
Hoover.
again.
Say again.
Noam Chomsky described Nixon as the last liberal president, considering what he did for civil rights and environmental protections.
Yeah,
Well,
I
I
would.
mean, it's interesting. Like, we know that Nixon was something. I generally tend to side with the idea that Nixon was the last of the paleocons, and
It
that
wasn't a paleoconservatism didn't come around until Buchanan.
I know
But then
that
again, Buchanan was heavily influenced by
identify
Nixon.
with that, and he was very Machiavellian and a very complicated individual. I'm using primarily but if the book that I always recommend people go read is Patrick Buchanan's White House Wars. It's in book, and you look into the real anger and hatred that was shared between figures like Nixon and figures like Eisenhower, who was essentially
He was basically a social democrat. But
he was the first of the neoconservatives. He was a New Deal Republican. But
Yeah,
again,
well,
this is all secondary sort of stuff. We can have this conversation a little bit later. I do have to get out of here pretty quick though.
You think about coming back later when we get onto the immigration discussion?
Maybe. I mean, it just depends on how much this other talk hits me up. Did anybody else want to throw in any comments?
I was saying
actually-
basically the opposite of what you said like a few minutes ago, where I was saying there is no real left-wing party in the United States. But I think if you would say that like there's just two neoliberal on economics and neoconservative on foreign policy parties in the United States, then yeah, I think that's
neoliberal economics, neoconservative foreign policy, and progressive social policy. Yeah.
I mean, I think that might be the only place where they slightly differ, because like that's the easiest issue to kind of.
Well, then, if you're going to try and claim that the progressive social policy is not an element of American foreign policy, then you have to explain to me how Donald Trump is somehow more like right wing than even Bill Clinton in 1992 or Barack Obama in 2008.
You think Trump is to the left of Obama?
Trump came in. What is Trump? What is Trump's big thing with the LGBT community? He's the first president in U.S. history to ever run as a pro-LGBT candidate.
That is true.
Barack
At least on his
Obama
first
did not-
term. At least on his first term. Yeah.
Well, no, Barack Obama did not even support gay marriage in 2012.
That's hilariously correct. Yes.
It didn't become like
Well,
gay
first-
marriage didn't become the sort of blitzkrieg issue until directly after Barack Obama's second term. Like now, I knew that.
Nice doesn't necessarily mean you're the good guy, because I mean,
I don't.
Yeah,
I'm not.
actually
Ray,
done
I'm
anything
not
for that
Ray,
community.
Ray, I'm not interested in getting in a debate with you. So I'm just going to leave it with that. That Trump is what he is. We all knew that going in. He's got some right wing policies. He's got some left wing. I do have to get out of here though. I'll catch you later, man.
Mhm. Okay, so I just found an article that says Obama very well did support gay marriage in 2012. He did run in support of it. So it wouldn't be accurate to describe Donald Trump as the first pro-LGBT president. Like Joe Biden actually came around to gay marriage back in 2010.
The claim is always like on his first term, because Obama's first term was 2008.
Yeah, but that wasn't what the other guy was saying. He was like, even on his second
yeah.
term, Obama didn't support gay marriage, which no.
which was untrue. Exactly. I thought that was.
I think he did. He did.
And also, I think that it was one of those things where during that time period, like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, late 2000s, like as a politician, you couldn't say that you were in favor of gay marriage because of the fact that I mean, everyone remembers what it was like back then, right? It was impossible.
Well, it depends where you were. California would have been fine.
I mean, speaking from a UK context as well, by the way, I only came to the UK in 2007, right? And the United Kingdom did not have gay marriage until 2013, and that was like controversial at that time as well, and it's still controversial right now. So, I mean, people are overestimating the extent to which I think often in these conversations, people are overestimating the extent to which progress has occurred on various issues, or like where people are on a lot of issues, because we often see the world through this very strange lens that seems to exist like somewhere in a newsroom in probably the most progressive place on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I kind of feel like we're looking at the world through the lens of Portland or something, right? Whereas like that's not how it actually works out. In the context of what Trump did, where he came out and he held up that rainbow flag on during his campaign when he was running the first time. Like at the time, people didn't think that was actually like a sincere gesture. I mean, first off, he held it upside down.
Did he?
Yes, he was holding
Yes,
it
he did.
upside down when he
He
did
held it
that.
upside down.
It's kind
Which is one
of
of
just like the Bible.
Which is one of those things where they tell you when you're holding up the flag, like, do not hold it upside down because you may cause offense to them, etc., etc. I mean, he held it upside down, and like no one called him out on that for some reason.
I think
And
that's just more so
That's a
because he's an
minor
idiot.
point.
I think it's more so
Well,
Yeah,
because
I mean, personally,
Well,
I
I
don't
would
think
say-
I was offended by Trump's holding the flag upside down. I was more like, okay, you're being pretty clever here, and actually, the right has kind of lost this cleverness, at least on this issue. That they were having this very effective wedge thing where they're like, there was this Muslim shooting at a gay nightclub.
Pulse nightclub. shooting.
Recently, gay marriage has stopped really becoming that hot button, a political topic, because gay marriage had already been passed. Wait, I know. What if
Pivoted to
we
the
were to
West.
say we're pro-gay and say, but we're defending the gays from Muslims who have
That's
regressive
exactly-
social views,
No,
Well,
you're
and
exactly
use
right.
it to support
That's
anti-immigration and anti-Islam sort of rhetoric.
Again, how I view it is that they like the Republicans. I mean, some probably like care a little bit, but they don't like these issues like gay marriage, abortion. These are issues that are very easy to posture about, but at the end of the day, don't really affect like the income of the people in these parties or like the interests that back these parties at all. And so they're very easy issues to get people divided on and to get voters on. But at the end of the day, it's not hurting their bottom line and the bottom line of the
Yeah.
companies that are giving them money.
And also, don't forget that what happens at the state level is often not the same as what you see when you have federal elections. So,
Yeah.
like even during the same time period where Trump was striding around talking about this LGBT flag he was holding up, what was happening in Kentucky at that exact same time? Well, just slightly before that, was that they had an election of some sort in which they were supposed to select between a Democrat and a Republican. I can't remember at which level this was occurring, but it was somewhere in Kentucky, and the decision would affect whether there would be access to the Obamacare provisions for the people in that state. And so the Republican ran on a very weird and bizarre anti-gay and anti-Hispanic platform, and like people voted away their own health care in order to somehow like harm the in order to harm the imaginary Hispanics and almost non-existent gay people that they were being told about. So I think that the Republican Party plays this strange, weird double game where if they're in the federal level, they will try to kind of moderate what they're saying, but then lower down the scale when you go down to the state level, then you start to hear what they're really talking about.
Well, there was that whole attempt to make abortion punishable by death, and I think Iowa. No,
Yeah,
it wasn't Iowa. It was Ohio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, what's Kasich behind that? I can't see him being behind it,
I don't know. I have to take a look.
but I don't think he'd go that far.
I think
because-
the heartbeat bills that came out of Iowa were fucking an atrocity, and thank God the Iowa Supreme Court struck that down before it even got out of the state.
I mean, it's just such a
Yeah.
hypocritical position. Yes, I am in favor of a pro-life position. I believe that life starts at conception. However, if you are ever even misled into attempting to end that life, you deserve to have your head removed.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah, that's
well,
not
and
pro.
also, like, you can look at it this way: the people at this, like at the state and local level, as much as I like them more than the people in the federal government, are worse at playing the political game. They're either more sincere or they're worse at politics. You know. And I guess being more sincere is being worse at politics, unfortunately.
Which, in some extent, that is better because, on one hand, you at least know that people have the values they have. On the other hand, it can lead to people having monstrous views, like, the one I just described.
Yeah, or like in San Francisco, where one of the state senators decriminalized knowingly giving someone AIDS. The same guy who is pushing for lowering the age of consent to sometimes 14.
Surreal.
Yeah. You know, I mean,
Sorry, I was
am-
about to say. On that note, should we move on to the abortion or abortion? The
I think,
abortion
I
part
think the
of
conversation was
abortion.
naturally moving towards abortion. Let's go
Yep.
for it.
Yes. Okay. So let us officially commence that portion of the stream.
Okay.
So everybody's position on abortion.
So this is going to be probably kind of like out of left field for somebody wearing my hat, but I am absolutely a pro-choice advocate, right? Which means that it comes down to the choice of the woman involved, because that is literally the only person that we can conceivably verify is in fact a person by any stretch of the imagination. Which means if we can't figure out that the thing that's inside her is a person or not, then we have to fall back to the thing that we do have, as which we absolutely know is a person, and give them the choice. That way they can decide how their body works and how it actually
Because
pertains to them.
I agree. I think life begins at conception, but I don't think life is the same as personhood.
Mhm.
So I mean, I don't really hold any strong positions here, so I'm gonna raise some hypotheticals here.
Sure,
So it's fine to end a life that's not a person.
correct.
What do you define as, and you define a person as what?
I define a person as what? Somebody who tends to have brain activity in the prefrontal cortex.
Okay, so like
Interesting.
the paralyzed, the severely mentally disabled would.
Yep. Are not living people.
Okay, and they don't deserve rights.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Well, I mean, it's not like
Interesting.
anyone is going to drag a severely disabled person up to the polls or something.
So what if they have like Down syndrome or something with it?
If they want to use the night again, we go back to the fact that we can kind of understand it's one of those that we could fall back, like even within my hypothetical where I say that they're not technically a person and therefore not able to consent. What we do is we have that person around their family is around them that are in fact their legal guardian and can make that determination for them.
Are they an individual? Are they an individual though?
That's where it gets a little bit more concerned, because like logically within my own argument, no, they're not, because they lack the mental capability to be considered a human, not a human being, but a person, to be able to make their own choices like that. So, yeah.
So what about somebody who has like a severe mental illness, but for instance, like schizophrenia, that's a good example, an extreme example, but they definitely have severe debilitating mental issues, yet at the same time, like even when they're not functional, they tend to have, for instance, higher IQs than the average person.
Sure.
When they are medicated, or even when they're not medicated, they can do some pretty brilliant things. Like John Nash. Does everybody who know who John?
Oh,
Nash
I know
is?
exactly who John Nash is. I actually use this man as an example on why schizophrenics should. Some schizophrenics might not need to be medicated, because they can just say, "Fuck it, I'm not paying attention to the crazy shit that's in my brain."
Yeah.
And in that particular situation, I think that I know it's an extreme example, but it's one of those things that we'd have to have that conversation at the time. I think you can handle it on a case-by-case basis. But
Okay.
Within my own logical consistency, yeah, like that person would also not be considered a person and not able to make their own decisions.
Well, see, you're getting into some weird territory now that I don't.
Yeah,
think...
because like for instance, I happen to have several mood disorders, but I mean I'm clearly a person. I mean
Sure.
I take medication. I mean I didn't take my medication, or actually, I took my medication today. Mine.
Can we
But,
all
like,
press X to doubt that the politicrat is a person?
yeah, I'm not. Guys, I'm not. I'm like the result of a hive mind. So
Personally, I believe that you're a construction of my imagination.
okay,
Oh,
you know what?
somebody else who I hold that same idea. You're all fucking
Hey,
constructs.
okay. So this might be a better topic for the Homo sapien agenda philosophy podcast I'm going to start. But I've sometimes wondered, what if like all of life is just my mind, is like just a construct of my own imagination, and I'm like the only actual person alive.
Yeah.
Then why? God, you're such a terrible person. Why did you construct Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't know. God.
Well, solipsism is a very
For the
new
memes.
philosophy, and I think that would be actually interesting to explore. To answer your question on abortion, just to get back to that topic, I'm unambiguously pro a person's right to choose. I believe any person should be able to decide whether they want to get pregnant and have a baby, or whether they should decide they should want to have an abortion instead.
I hold
Yeah.
the same position, 100% pro-choice, and the reason, of course, is because as part of reproductive justice, you have to allow people to make these choices themselves, and one of the consequentialist reasons as to why having people make the choice themselves is better is because a state that can tell you when to give birth is a state that can also tell you to do other things with your reproductive organs that you don't want them to be doing. We've also seen this happening in the recent ICE camps revelation, in which people are forcibly putting hysterectomies, putting people through hysterectomies without their consent. The state which doesn't allow you to consent to being pregnant or non-pregnant is the same state that's going to rip out your uterus when it feels like. So
You're saying that if we get rid of abortion, then Trump's going to steal my balls and my cum?
Yes,
Potentially.
Oh fuck!
potentially.
So
You want Trump
Yeah.
wants your cum.
No,
Although that
seriously,
probably won't
seriously, though.
happen towards you because generally this sort of argument tends to focus more on women's bodies.
sure.
Like I noticed that the whole Alabama, when it was proposed to the Alabama Senate, okay, you believe that life begins at conception, and by life I'm referring to, oh, you're a full person at conception, and you believe that abortion should be limited to 8 weeks after pregnancy. Well, all right. How about we have mandatory vasectomies then, until men can marry and then they can reverse it if they choose to do so and can support a baby on their own terms. And I
Suddenly
noticed
they
the
also need
Republican
to, right?
Senate suddenly turned to be very, very pro bodily autonomy. That's quite
Wow.
unfair to
Right.
these men.
No, bodily autonomy is one of the craziest things to consider. I actually watched ContraPoints' video on this, and I was like, I'd already been in the pro-choice camp, right? But this, when she made that argument across the board, I was like, Jesus Christ, body autonomy is how you actually make the argument to the conservative evangelicals to get them on board with that, right? Because the point that the argument she brought up was I forget what the name of the book was, or like a paper or something like that, but it basically presented the argument, right? Which is, let's pick the most prominent person, like, well, fuck it, we'll go with Bill Gates, right? Like, Bill Gates needs like a liver transplant, right? And you have the liver. Is it okay for you for the government to come in and strap you down, cut your liver out to give it to Bill Gates because we've deemed him far more important, right? The correct answer is, of course not, right?
Well, I mean, if I was Bill Gates in that situation and I was in a room with a knife, I'd kill you for your liver.
Right, but the argument that's being made is that it's okay for the government to tell somebody what they can and can't do inside their body in regards to a fetus. But it's what's the distinction between a fetus and a heart, right? Literally nothing at the stage that we're talking about aborting it.
Besides flavor profile, yeah, there's nothing different.
So, it's like once I saw that, I was like, fuck that. All the Christians are nuts. Fuck them. They're stupid. Light them on fire. Because abortion is invading someone's body and you're trying to tell somebody that they can't choose what to do with their body. And as a libertarian, I hold that particular idea of body autonomy to be almost sacrosanct at this point.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so my position on it, I have a very principled position on it. So personally, I'm not going to call myself pro-life, because I am pro-life, like in the general sense. But the thing is, like, that term's become politicized and it refers specifically to
That's why I just got to be pro-death.
No. But so I'm pro-life in the sense, like I said, I think life begins at conception. Number one. Number two, I am not for abortion. I mean, like, if I had a female friend who came to me, is like, "Hey, Politicrat, I just got knocked up by James Franco," and
my question would be, why are you sleeping with James Franco?
I don't know.
Yeah, was that consensual?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, to me, it didn't really sound particularly consensual.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, yeah, let's
change this a little bit. Let's say one of your male friends comes up to you and says, Bella Thorne put a baby in me. With her, Bella Thorne made me pregnant. So I want to get an abortion. Homie, what should I do? Should I pull the baby out of my butthole?
So Bella Thorne calls me up. It's like, "Hey, Politicrat, what's up? I just got pregnant by..."
Wait, are you friends with Bella Thorne?
What?
Are you friends with Bella Thorne?
No, this is hypothetical. This is hypothetical.
I'll
Shut up! You're ruining the joke, fuckheads.
I'll tell you the story later.
Fair enough.
It's not a story for this stream. But anyway, so let's say Bella Thorne calls me up. It's like, hey, Politicrat, what's up? I just got pregnant by James Franco, and should I get an abortion? I would say no. I do not think you should get an abortion, but you make the final decision. I don't think I should have the right to say. I mean, that's just like my personal belief. However, so I believe that the government should just get out of abortion altogether.
Sure.
Which means, and in order for me to adhere to the rules of my own logic, that means the government should neither outlaw abortion, but at the same time, it also should not subsidize Planned Parenthood, because you are more or less taking tax dollars of people who do not morally agree with abortion, and you are forcing them to subsidize something that they morally disagree with.
No.
But you could argue this about
You can read this about
foreign
any
wars or literally any sort of policy.
And
I don't
I would.
agree that this road should be constructed. Why
Yes.
should my tax dollars be used to construct a road and a highway all the way over on the East Coast? My tax dollars should stay here.
Yes.
Well, then there you
They
go.
should.
No, but that's a little
Unironically.
but that's not like. I don't think that's equivalent. That's not as hot button an issue. Like everybody wants
Okay.
roads.
Here's
The
a hot
hot
definition then.
button of the issue doesn't.
I opposed the war in Libya, and yet my tax money was taken and used to overthrow Muammar Gaddafi, who I did not want to see overthrown.
Yeah,
That's
no,
a hot button
well,
issue.
I mean,
Why is my tax money being collected?
For instance, I am for like heavy defederalization at the point where maybe it would be a good idea for the military to be split into like, I guess, 150 different branches, 3 branches for each state, right?
Or different legion, different like the Roman Empire.
Whatever, yeah, you know. So like
Different
if say the people of California, if the
We
people
really
of
don't want to copy
California,
the Roman Empire's model. They were constantly using their private armies to try to overthrow
well, no,
and
here's what I'm
install
saying.
new leaders because
That was the
my-
late Roman Empire.
That sounds even more chaotic.
Yeah, if the people of California don't want to send their, say, legion to the Middle East, then they just wouldn't. You know, it'll stay here eating tacos.
Interesting. I actually I never thought of it that way, and I don't necessarily disagree with that model.
You know, why don't we just like gut the federal government and give all the power back? Because like the money, it's not like we're taking money out of the government, right?
you want to
Because,
be these United States.
Well, yeah, we want to be
But
the
even
United
then-
States, not like a federation under one controlling branch.
I mean,
I
even
think
then,
people would be more
you're just moving the point where the principle applies from the federal government down to a state
Yeah.
level, for
No,
example.
we are.
And then you
but-
have state
That's
government.
actually
Well, what if
fundamental
your
of the
military is sent abroad? You belong to a state, and you're like, I disagree with the actions of my
Hey,
state. Why should my tax dollars be used?
S in
defend these-
the S in United States is very important.
Sure,
You're
but
not,
like
you're
even
not
yes,
the
I
United States. You're the
No,
United
the reason
States.
I invoked that point in the first place was because you could use that argument against anything that a state or municipality is spending on that you don't want it to spend on, even though
sure.
the election went a certain
yeah,
way.
you,
So,
I mean,
why-
you definitely could.
Actually, hold on a
Hold
second
on.
here.
No, no, hold on.
Like the principle that the Politicrat is bringing up is in fact a principle, right? But this is where I because I hold the same principle he does, but how it is implemented would be that you then take your principle and then craft a message and then persuade people to vote with you. And if you get defeated on that, then yeah, that's the will of the people and it's going to stay funded, right?
Uh-huh.
But holding the principle and trying to transition and persuade people to—that's the political process working in it.
Mm.
Oh, okay.
Working
If he just meant that would be the argument he would take during the political process, then sure, I have no problem with people making that argument in that sense.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if he was saying that should be an ethical principle that the government should operate on, which is if I have a moral objection to a particular thing, then we should not fund that thing. Then
No,
the entire government
no.
would be abolished.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that a system on a less federal, more on like state by state basis, you know, would be. It's much easier for an individual to make change directly in the government on that scale. Because you're not operating in this bloated federal system, you're operating in a less bloated, because just the size of it, the state system. I mean, like you look like even like bad changes, right? Like California decriminalize it, or like making robbery under $1,000 not a felony. You know, that type of change. It's much easier to do those type of things already on the state level. So I just think if we want, if you truly value democracy, then the biggest enemy to democracy in the United States is probably the federal government.
Interesting. That's a good argument.
What about the argument of Jim Crow?
Oh yeah,
When
no.
the states could
Oh yeah, no, I'm for it.
Well,
I'm
because
kidding.
I'm not saying entirely remove the federal government. I think that the Bill of Rights, you know, like there is a place for it, right? Like these aren't entirely separate countries. I don't want this to be the EU too, you know. Like,
you two electric boogaloo.
the
Fuck you, I
Constitution,
got to it first. Fuck off.
the Constitution would be the guiding. Like, you have to follow these rules. This is what the federal government, like some federal peacekeeping, this is what that is for. Is for making sure you're not
technically, the
violating the
European
rights
Union
we
has
agree
that too.
upon. Outside of like,
the European Union has that too, though. The European Human Rights Act of
okay, sure.
1998, for example, where
but
you
I wouldn't-
can't go against the fundamental principles of the EU, or they'll sanction you.
perfect.
They'll sanction you too, electric boogaloo.
But like Ray, for instance, how would you feel if someone in like, I don't know, fucking Russia was like sending like your son who was in the British military to the Middle East to die? You know, because that's like about the connection some of these states have together at this point. Like, because looking at America again at the scale of a country, especially from like you know, because it's kind of deceptive because we're really not operating on the scale of a country.
Well, I mean, you can make
How
some
so?
sort of argument about the Canadian provinces, but honestly, I just think we're stronger together, and that it would just be foolishness if we just divide.
I think one province would disagree with that, right?
Well, Quebec lost its referendum twice,
Hey, we should have Chep on here.
and it can't even
Quebec
openly
are
say that
not
we want
divided,
independence
so.
without immediately fracturing and weakening.
Right, but I mean that might be true, but I think that the United States is already fracturing. It's already
yeah.
weakening, and
Sure,
we're in
totally.
a very interesting state politically. I know a lot of people on here like to, and not you guys, but people who have come on here compare it to Rome. I think comparing it to another country LARPing as Rome would probably be more apt. I feel like there's a lot of parallels to Weimar Germany.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, Rome was already LARPing as Babylon anyway.
It's
and
LARPing all the
Greece.
way down.
Yeah,
Rome, Empire's all the way down.
it was always LARPing.
Also, I would have to say as well, if you're gonna do the whole allowing people to engage in, like, I guess what you'd say is a form of light separatism, there's going to be like unintended consequences from that you may have to deal with as well. Like, I mean, for instance, the town that I live in, we are now, even though it was not so, like, you know, many years ago, but we are now a majority Asian town, right? So under the logic that you guys are pursuing here, what would prevent us from just deciding that, you know, we don't want to be part of like the county that we're in anymore? We're just going to secede as a town.
Again, this is fairly arbitrary, but I think the scale at which like the states are right now, you know, they're about the size of most European countries,
Well, sure.
depending on the scale of the states. That is
And
a scale that has been proven to operate well, you know? Like all of these European countries, I mean, yes, they fight a lot, but again, like this is a scale that these cultures and these communities, they last for centuries. But you don't see these empires last that long. And I think that's just a problem of scale.
You mean the Chinese Empire didn't last for centuries?
Chinese Empire is still around. What do you
That is true, but I think. Well, first of all, I wouldn't want to be. I wouldn't want to be in China, and second of all, it's kind of an outlier compared to all the other empires that have been around.
I mean, even the country that is now referred to as simply Japan, for example, I mean, that started out pretty small in terms of like the amount of area it was under control of one solitary individual. It must have gone through probably greater than 20 civil wars to arrive at its present configuration, and it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon either.
No, but it's also like the size of California.
Japan has like 120 million people. It's at least 3 times the size of California.
Yeah.
Geographically or like density.
Political population.
No, I'm talking about I'm talking about specifically like geographic size of these areas.
Okay. I guess.
Like it's I don't know. Because
So,
I mean,
like,
I
how
mean, maybe
big does
there,
a
like,
country
people
have to get
in
before you
California
believe
they
it
fall
should
apart?
Balkanize?
I don't know. I mean, it is definitely tricky because you could definitely have these density issues. Like, I mean, Alaska is huge, but it's also the least populated state. So I mean, geographical size
I
is
think
not the
that
only
is
concern
Wyoming,
here.
actually,
You might be right.
and then Vermont.
Yeah, and there are also plenty of places in the Middle East that seem to have like ridiculous levels of land surface as well. I mean, Saudi Arabia, for example, hasn't fallen apart, even though it probably should, but it hasn't.
Yeah, I mean, that would be
is
goals for this decade, honestly. Saudi Arabia collapse, bitch.
I mean, again, without the support of the United States, I don't know if they would still be around in their current form.
Actually, no, that is a point there too. I mean, Syria, for example, although that did actually collapse, but that was pushed. Let me think of another one. Democratic Republic of the Congo. Although I could say, I guess you could argue that's in a perpetual state of collapse at all
Okay.
times.
Yeah, the DCR should honestly just dissolve into various different smaller nations and
Yeah,
ethnic
that
groups.
one really
Okay, I
should.
just want to say, speaking of democratic republics, can we all agree that whenever there is a country that has in the name of the country the United People's Democratic Free Republic of so and so is most likely not going to be a United Democratic People's Republic?
It's
Yeah, there's
consistent terminology. They have to say it so people believe it.
Yeah,
I know,
I know.
so you guys, back to my point. You guys are totally right. Where like location is or size of the area is not the most important thing. I'm looking at it right now. Like there are more people in Washington D.C. than there are in the entire state of Vermont or Wyoming. So like there are definitely other considerations to take. But I just think if you value democracy, I think democracy functions better at a smaller level.
Okay.
That's the
you
main
may be
point I
right.
have.
There's way to decentralize power without necessarily giving every state its own like legion.
That was a very hypothetical that I have never
Yeah.
thought of before. I just thought it was funny, so I engaged with it.
Have the others gone because they're basically running out of time?
Well, no, yeah. So we're gonna go for. I'm gonna see if Chicago is gonna come back. He might come back,
Um,
and because
it's
because
getting
we
to
still
about
need. I feel like we need somebody. What?
it's getting to about midnight. Do you think?
Oh yeah, we're gonna go for. We'll go till 2 hours. We'll go, or actually, we'll go another 8 minutes.
Okay, so we've got 5 minutes left if we're going to 2 hours.
Yeah. So.
Okay,
So I guess we're not going to get to the, we're not going to get to the immigration part tonight. We'll save that for another episode on its own because
Yeah.
honestly, at this point, I think that I was being a little too ambitious. But so yeah, we'll finish the debate. I think we pretty much covered the abortion thing. I think it's too bad it's Chicago's internet crashed. So
right.
so yeah, and I was looking forward to having him give a more conservative opinion on abortion. So I mean, maybe we'll save that for another time too. Maybe make a 1 hour long episode dedicated specifically to that, or maybe do like a debate style like at that point. But
And bring Damnation back again as well, because I mean, I was not expecting. I mean, for a guy wearing a Trump hat, he gave some surprising opinions I was not expecting from.
Damnation's a good guy. Like I mean, he's interesting. I feel like.
If only someone could break him out of the anti-SJW state he's in. I feel like he has amazing politics.
You see, the thing is, I feel like the anti-SJW thing. So like, I do agree that like social justice warriors are a problem, but like I don't think that he said he's a single issue guy, and I don't think that is like the hill to die on if you're a single issue person, because like
social justice warriors aren't even like.
At this point, I've left the culture
on my list of priorities, and I don't even think the concept exists. There are unpleasant, controlling people on the left. There are unpleasant, controlling people on the right. I think no matter what kind of political spectrum you're going to get to, you're going to find unpleasant, controlling people that you need to kind of stand up to.
And at this point, I've just left the culture war behind. I've hung up my sword. I've gone back to my plow. I'm on my metaphorical farm. Like, I mean, I went through my Sargon phase back in like 2015, 2016, went back in like my freshman, sophomore year of college. And it's like, I'm just done with that now. It's just boring at this point.
I just don't want the United States to erupt into violent civil war. I just want to grill, for God's sakes.
I think in my case, I was too late. I was too late to the progress scene to have actually noticed the shift. So it was almost like, or the shift that the anti-SJWs allege happened, because it was almost like I showed up on the scene and I was kind of like, maybe we should like afford more rights to like people who have been marginalized previously, because we've been like doing like a bunch of oppression to a bunch of people. Maybe we should stop doing that.
And you came of age more back in like during 90s politics, right? That was your scene, 90s politics.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, it was quite obvious that like I remember when it was bad. So I'm kind of like, okay, so I'm not seeing where the bad part here is, given that where we are right now seems to be better than where we were when I was younger.
The culture war in the 90s, from what I recall, was pretty bad too. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about how each generation thinks they're living in like the most important and the worst and the greatest all at the same time era in human history, when that's really not true.
Exactly.
It's generational hubris.
Like I only wish that it would be, well, no, I wouldn't wish for that because I wouldn't be the same person, but you know, it would be interesting if I were to grow up in the era that now exists and see what is different about it.
I feel like we all see it differently. And I literally, I mean this in the most literal sense of all, we see it differently. We see the world in a completely different way.
Age no state.
Did you say ethno-state?
No, age no state. It's like an ethno state, but instead there's no old people allowed. It's like
Oh, I
it's just
thought,
TikTok.
I thought you said Asian no-state. Like
No.
Asian
It's like
state,
TikTok, but it's TikTok, but a country.
Oh, so it's eugenics.
Is eugenics killing old people?
But
Like
anyway,
like,
I just want to
after
say
you get, no. After you like, it's like you live in California when you're 18, but after you become 45, you have to move to Detroit.
fuck that. Become human, guys. No one got that joke. Never mind. Okay, so anyway, for abortion though, honestly, or at least for Roe v. Wade, I really don't think that it's as threatened as a lot of people say it is. It's just kind of like when the right are like they're coming for our guns, whereas Obama was actually less anti-gun than Trump in terms of legislation or in terms of like executive action. But honestly, I don't see Roe v. Wade going anywhere, especially given the fact that for the past, I think it was like 40, 50 years, is it like 4-1 or is it 3-1? I forget. Supreme Court justice nominees have been conservatives, and they've all, regardless of what you think of them, they've all stuck to precedent. Even Kavanaugh has. I honestly think at this point, I think historical entropy is a thing, more or less. I mean, we might see some limits to Roe v. Wade, but I really don't think it's going anywhere. And that's not me being optimistic or pessimistic. That's just me looking at history and giving my what I think is going to happen, my prediction based upon previous trends. So I don't think. Or what we can do, I think the best thing to do would be maybe make like some kind of mutual pact. The left won't come for the right's guns if the right won't come for the left's abortions. I don't know. I have solved the divide.
Yes. Especially considering as the left is becoming more pro-gun, or at least that sort of old left attitude towards gun control is resurfacing. I think plenty of people would be happy to make your deal. Anyway, since it is almost 2 and we've crossed the 2-hour time limit, would everyone like to give sort of closing statements?
Lapis, is this your live stream?
No, but she has a good point.
Nope, she's
Anyway, okay, so what I was going to say, so now that we've come past 2 hours, would everybody like to give their closing statements? Let's start with Mop. Let's start with you, Mop.
The California Legion's coming for you, If you're over 45, you're going to Detroit. That's it.
Ray?
Yeah, so I mean, I've got an interesting story for you guys. I mean, just as my closing, have you guys ever heard the story of
The
Trump?
tragedy of Darth Plagueis?
Yeah, the inept. So basically, he was a tax avoider who was so powerful that he was able to pay only $750 in taxation.
That's
despite
amazing.
Being a millionaire, and he taught his his big mistake was he taught his lawyer everything he knew, and one day his lawyer then came and released a scathing book, and then went on a series of network news tours, which completely destroyed him. Now you all may be wondering, is there a way to learn this power? Not from the IRS.
That's kind of funny. No, but I was like, okay, so here's my controversial take. I base it, in my opinion, on like dodging taxes and tax loopholes and paying taxes. Like, if you find a way to get out of paying the income tax, congratulations, you've won. That's my position. Like, seriously, you've won. Go ahead, by all means. Like, you've won the game of life.
No, but on a serious note, though, this is one of those things where it can only play out 2 ways. Either he literally avoided the taxation and only paid $750 because he was like one of the greatest tax avoiders ever, like in American history, or alternately, he paid $750 because the amount of his income versus his outgoings was so incredibly absurd that was actually the correct amount of tax for him to have paid, given his financial situation.
That would be funny.
100% above order and honest, which would then mean that he is possibly weirdly indebted to very shady individuals.
No. If you look at like there's other ways. You can write off, like, for instance, when he and I'm not a big Trump guy, but like if you like a building project, say in Mexico, fucking fails and you lose $1 billion, you can write that off your taxes.
Yeah, that is true. Plus,
No,
also, I think we need to.
of his personal stuff though, as opposed to like his business, because obviously his business paid taxes, right? Payroll tax and all these other things that go along with that. But if I understand how federal income tax in the U.S. works, that is his personal income tax that we're talking about. So how could he write that off using some business asset?
I don't. I've only filled out W-2s, man. Like I don't. I'm pretty like smooth brain when it comes to taxes.
I'm no expert here either, because I mean it could be some American thing that I don't understand, but we'll see.
So with Donald Trump, I think the real issue is not that one man is bad or that one man is a genius for figuring out how to not pay taxes, but rather that Donald Trump is exploiting loopholes that are in place that rich people have used to avoid paying their fair share in society for generations. And if we ever want to move towards a better, fair place, then everyone will have to pay their fair share and everyone will have to make a contribution. And if they fail to, then they are ultimately setting themselves up as a, well, I guess you could say that these sort of tax avoiding millionaires and billionaires, in some ways, they're just doing what they did, how they acquired all of their wealth in the first place. Taking from others and refusing to contribute.
Anyway, so I think we're going into a completely different territory right now. We're trying to wrap up, but Lapis, do you have any closing thoughts just on the issue with the courts and abortion and all that fun shit?
Well, I hope that you are correct that all of the judges will stick to precedent and will not threaten abortion rights or LGBT rights or.
I see it as property rights, honestly. I think you own yourself. Like I see it as a property rights issue. Like that's why I'm what you call an evictionist. If anybody knows what that is.
Well, anyway, as I was, I hope that you're right. I fear that you're wrong. And if you are wrong, then we may need to consider ways that we can reform the Supreme Court to actually function as a nonpartisan, effective check on power. Thank you very much for having me on stream.
Yeah, all right, everybody. It was nice having everyone on. We were up at what, 6 or 7? No, we were up at like 7 people. Then everybody just slowly started dipping out. But that's fine. I mean, usually our streams end with fewer people because people have commitments and all that. And plus, I'm a little less organized than most streamers. Plus, I usually go a little longer. This is actually the shortest episode of the Political Pigpen we've had, or any stream on this channel, believe it or not. But yeah, so I mean, I kind of like. I think this is a good length. Usually, I think I've been kind of getting into the groove a little better.
There's like a study thing as well that says if you do live streams, you should try to get them to be about 2 hours because that's the amount that people are willing to watch.
Yeah, and that's where we are right now. Like longest, I remember Lapis. You and the Mop were on the one where what didn't we go for like 3 hours and 45 minutes?
And there were like 9 people on that one. That was too many people.
No, that was the one with Hara, where she just completely got mad at Outreamer and just ended up like rage quitting. That was before Lapis came on, and I was like, Lapis, we need another leftist, somebody who won't yell at people.
Yeah, and actually, I think we had sort of the opposite problem. Outreamer kept getting mad at me with that one.
Yeah, he did. No, he wasn't. Actually, he wasn't that mad at you. He said you were. I mean, at least you were civil and easy to talk to. So
I don't get that as like I don't know. I just don't get that lens, like that point of view. I don't look at things how he looks at things. But he's interesting to talk to.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, we are friends in real life. So really, he's a really nice guy though. So.
And between the friends you have in real life on here, Strange Seconds, which is like he's like an ANCOM or something, and that guy, you're like a centrist, man.
What?
Is like Strange Seconds is your friend in real life too, right?
Oh yeah, no, I've known him.
Yeah, so compared to all these people, it's almost as though you're in the center of where they're standing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't even really consider. I know this sounds very arrogant, but I transcend the left-right dichotomy.
Oh, right. Have you seen that meme where it takes the political compass and it places it flat on the table and then it builds like a pyramid atop that, and then in the center of the top of the pyramid, so you're both in the center and above it, standing at the peak of the pyramid. It has like that guy from the meme thing. I can't remember his name.
Enlightened centrism.
It was some actor. It was some actor guy, like two twins or something, and they have like plastic surgery or something.
Oh, the Bogdanovs.
Yeah, they're standing at the top of the pyramid for some reason.
The
But that's
Bogs control everything.
I feel like that's basically Sargon. Yeah. All right. On that note, everybody. Well, I know Sargon's not watching, but Sargon, if you are listening, we'd love to have you on the stream. I actually would. That would actually be very interesting. Honestly, okay, I'm going to say something real quick. I honestly think that, especially in economics, I would be to the right of Sargon.
Well, Sargon is a dishonest actor, so it doesn't really matter.
I don't know. I still kind of like Sargon.
Sargon is nuts.
He seems like no. I do. I think he'd be fun to have a beer with and fun to talk to. Like that's why I would legitimately want to have him on the stream. And I know Ray is probably going to leave as soon as I say this, but I'd also like to have Academic Agent on the stream sometime.
No, he's more angry with me than I am with him. Like, I would have no problem having a conversation with him. It's he who wishes not to speak to me because he thinks that I'm, like, one of the most evil political actors in the entirety of this sphere for some reason. So it would be him having the objection, not me.
Oh, well, okay. On that note, in case any of you guys are watching/listening to a fourth-rate live streamer like me, give me a call and or give me a message, and I'll bring you on. You can have the privilege of coming on the Political Pigpen. But you guys tonight, you three and the other ones who came on, also had the privilege of coming on the Political Pigpen. So consider yourselves privileged. Good night, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you
night,
for the
everyone.
privilege, sir.